Good afternoon, family and friends of Michael Scott. I'm Bill Douglas, funeral assistant here at Miller Funeral Home. Today we gather to celebrate Mike's life and to mourn his passing. Truly, Mike led a life that's worthy of celebrating. Think of this as an award ceremony in recognition of Mike, who was what he was and what he accomplished. In our culture, celebrating is often done in a ritual in the company of friends and family. Think of weddings, graduations, retirement parties, birthdays. Joy is often magnified when shared with a group. Mourning rituals, on the other hand, aren't often done in our culture. Other than funerals, I can't think of any communal rituals of mourning. Typically, we think of mourning as something that we do in private, and often we do. But whereas joy is magnified when shared with a group, grief is lessened when shared. Grief is a process, a journey, and this journey is better traveled in the company of people who share your burdens. Therefore, your presence here is profoundly important, both for your own journey and for the loved ones gathered here today. So with that in mind, welcome. And on behalf of Michael Scott's family, thank you for coming. Diamonds are very impressive gems. Nothing sparkles with the brilliance of a diamond. At the best, the most expensive diamonds sparkle more than the others. The qualities that make a particularly sparkly diamond are cut and clarity. Cut is how the many facets are shaped, polished, and angled. Clarity is what's inside, the purity and the transparency at the heart of the gem. When I was talking to Heather and Jake about what kind of man Mike was, the image that kept coming up was that of a beautiful, sparkling diamond. Mike had many facets, and all were quite impressive. A Renaissance man, an expert in technology and science, but also a lover of poetry, art, and music. He was witty and had a great sense of humor. He had the knowledge and skill to design and build a computer. His skills and interests were many and varied. While Mike's many facets were remarkable, it's what was inside of him that made him truly shine. Mike had a heart full of love for Anne and Catherine, for his daughters, Heather, Wendy, and Elizabeth, his grandchildren and great-grandchildren. The heart of this diamond was beautiful. Michael J. Scott was born on July 21, 1954 in Berkeley, California, to Jess and Lana Scott. He has a sister, Janine, and step-siblings, Bill and Vicki Scott. His brother, Bill, predeceased him, but he is survived by a nephew, Greg. After an 8-year career in the Air Force, he worked as an engineer for TDS Telecom and then for companies Volcano and Philips as a tech support expert. Mike was smart and methodical, and he had an exceptional talent for solving tough technical problems. He loved a challenge, such as fixing Jake's motorcycle, programming calculators in gaming systems. The technically challenged boomer stereotype definitely did not apply to Mike. An insight into Mike's brilliant mind was his love for Dutch artist M.C. Escher. Wikipedia says Escher's work features, quote, mathematical objects and operations, including impossible objects, explorations of infinity, reflection, symmetry, perspective, truncated and stellated polyhedra, hyperbolic geometry, and tessellations. I wish Mike was here to explain what all that means. Maybe you've seen the pictures of the interlocking lizards or a building with multiple staircases that begin and end in impossible ways. Mike loved the artist's precision, order, geometric patterns, but it was twisted in a creative way that defies reality. Esther's art is creativity and math playing together, and that's what delighted Mike. Another insight into Mike's playful brilliance was his sense of humor. When explaining where something was, he would ask you where a specific landmark was. Once you'd agree, yes, I know where that is, he would say, well, it's nowhere near there. And then he would laugh. If you went out to dinner and anyone in his party asked Mike if the meal was good, he'd respond, yes, but you wouldn't like it. And his eyes would twinkle. Heather writes, when Mikey and my sister and I were young children, we did not wear seatbelts. We stood on the back seat holding onto the headrest of the seat in front of us while we goofed around. But Mikey put a stop to this no seatbelt nonsense. He said, if we get in a crash, everyone is going to be crying because everyone's going to be dead. Mike's precision was demonstrated when he barbecued or when he carved meat. It was surgical. Undoubtedly, that is why he loved the poem, When Father Carves the Duck. It's really his polar opposite. Mike spoke slowly and with exactitude. He liked to pronounce all the letters in the words. For example, he would say Chicago instead of Chicago, and that drove Heather crazy. He would pause while speaking, and sometimes Heather would inadvertently interrupt him, thinking he was finished. Michael was never in a hurry, listened wholeheartedly to others' ideas, and brilliantly shared his own insights with depth and calmness. Mike would avoid Folsom Boulevard, even though it was the fastest way to get to Heather's house. Instead, he always took back roads, enjoying the ride, looking at trees, birds, and houses. He even stopped to talk to a mentally unstable man who regularly yelled at the cars that drove by. Mike's peaceful and accepting demeanor won him over, and the mentally unstable man calmed down and talked to Mike. Despite his love of logic and precision, Mike was not cold or unfeeling. He was a romantic. Heather said Mike read books of love poems and wrote beautiful love letters to her mom, Catherine. He loved beautiful flowers, birds, cats. He found beauty in everyday life. He met Catherine at Catherine's parents' restaurant. On their first date, he asked Catherine to marry him. She was the love of his life. Heather says that Mike called Catherine his little songbird because she was always talking, singing, or humming. Heather loves that Mike told her this because over the years of caring for Catherine, it was a very sweet reminder. He not only kept her alive physically, but shared her sparkle long after she was gone. Mike loved deeply and was incredibly loyal. Mike saw photos of Burchard Gardens in a viewfinder as a young boy. And for the millennials out there, a viewfinder is kind of the archaic version of Google Earth slideshows. The Burchard Gardens is a group of floral display gardens in British Columbia on Vancouver Island. Does anyone know where Crater Lake is? Well, it's nowhere near there. The gardens receive over 1 million visitors each year and have been designated a National Historic Site of Canada. The photos were just so beautiful that Mike knew he wanted to go. A few years ago, after Catherine passed, he was able to make that trip with his sister Jan. Mike was generous beyond measure, helping his brother-in-law start a new business. He showered his grandchildren with gifts by the hundreds, literally. With hand-wrapped presents piled high in his truck, he personally delivered them, 25 or more gifts per child. He shared his Amazon Music subscription with his kids, and one year for Christmas even gave out MP3 players filled with music. For many years, he and Catherine hosted a large family get-together at Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, where he always carved the ham with perfection, of course. He also had cats, many cats. While seated in his living room, it was very common to see Mike covered in cats. Two cats on his lap, one sleeping on his shoulder and another tucked under his chin. Mike loved reading science fiction. He listened to rock music, like the Standards, Beatles, just about anything. Recently, he'd been listening to Linda Ronstadt. Of all his admirable traits, perhaps the most spectacular was his devotion to Catherine. While she battled ALS for 14 years, he was a true life hero who, along with Heather, cared for Catherine at home. Mike never left Catherine's side, with all-night vigils and life-saving care for more than a decade. He turned the living room into an emergency facility with ventilators, temperature and humidity controls, specialized equipment, all with backup generators that he put in place. When Catherine needed a higher oxygen concentration, Mike, ever the engineer, daisy-chained 10 oxygen concentrators together to give her 100% O2. He slept on an air mattress on the floor next to Catherine's bed, so he would wake every 2 hours to provide for her continuous needs. He didn't get a full night's sleep for years on end. In the morning, he was off to work for the day as he handed over the daycare shift to Heather, 7 days a week. And despite this grueling schedule, Mike and Heather hosted family get-togethers so that Catherine would always be included. As devastating as the loss of Catherine was 5 years ago, Michael refused defeat and with quiet dignity focused his energy on bringing joy to the family, friends, and coworkers. Everyone who knew Michael wished he could have enjoyed a retirement and indulged in the many projects he had envisioned. He will always be remembered as a heroic, loving, generous, brilliant, and kind man. Earlier, I compared Michael Scott to an exquisite diamond with many sparkling facets and a core of inner light, clarity, and transparency. But maybe it wasn't such a great comparison after all. Diamonds are forever, and Mike's time on earth was all too brief. Our hearts break when we think of all that Mike could have accomplished if he had another 20 or so years. But perhaps it's not helpful to think of Mike's life as one cut short or diminished. It may be more helpful to look at Mike's life not as if we expected it to be, but as it actually was, a life brimming with love, courage, loyalty, and accomplishments. Unfortunately, there are no easy answers to grief. There is no instant pathway to peace. Grief is a journey, and although the scenery changes and it eventually gets easier, the journey may last the rest of your lives. As fellow travelers on this journey, we acknowledge the great importance of Mike's life and the loss his passing brings. There is healing in gatherings such as this, where we connect with each other in shared mourning. And by listening and empathizing, we help bear each other's burdens on this journey. One fact is certain, Michael Scott will never be forgotten. We're going to play a song that Mike liked and the family chose. It's entitled Unforgettable by Nat King Cole. It says, "Unforgettable, that's what you are. Unforgettable, though near or far. Like a song of love that clings to me, how the thoughts of you does things to me. Never before has anyone been more unforgettable in every way."
Unforgettable, that's what you are. like a song of love that clings to me. How the thought of you does things to me never before has someone been more
unforgettable in every way,
and forevermore.
and forevermore.
That's how you'll stay.
That's how you'll stay.
That's why, darling, it's incredible that someone so unforgettable
Thinks that I am unforgettable too. No, never before has someone been more unforgettable in every way. And forevermore. That's how you'll stay.
That's how you'll stay. That's why, darling, it's incredible
that someone so unforgettable thinks that I am unforgettable too.
Mike was truly unforgettable. And at this point, we're going to have a slideshow that was prepared by Kim Mosley. And it has pictures throughout his life, and that you can hopefully bring up some happy memories.
Behind me.
high above the chimney top, that's where you find me, oh, somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly, and the dream that you dare to, oh why can't oh, someday I wish upon a star, wake up where the clouds are far behind. Be where trouble melts like a lemon drops, high above the chimney top, that's where you find me, oh, somewhere over the rainbow, way up high. The dreams that you dare to, why, oh why can't
Hold on, I'll be back for you, it won't be long. But for now there's something else that's calling me. So take me down a lonesome road, point me east and let me go. That suitcase weighs me down with memories. I just wanna be the one you run to, I just wanna be the one you come to. I just wanna be there for someone when the night comes. Let's put all the cares behind us and go where they'll never find us. I just wanna be there beside you when the night comes, when the night comes. Two spirits in the night, you can leave before the morning light. When there's nothing left to lose, there's nothing left to fear. So meet me on the edge of time, won't keep me waiting, I'll be right. Then you and I, we'll just run right out of here. I just wanna be the one you run to, I just wanna be the one when you come to. I just wanna be there for someone when the night comes. Let's put all the cares behind us and go where they never find us. I just wanna be there beside you when the night comes, when the night comes. I know there'll be a time when you and I could take our hands and run away. Pick up all the pieces from the shattered dream. We're gonna make it out someday. We'll be coming back to stay.
Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to arise. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these sunken eyes and learn to see all your life. You were only waiting for this moment to be free. Blackbird fly, blackbird fly into the light of a dark black night. Blackbird fly, blackbird fly into the light of a dark black night. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly all your life. You were only waiting for this moment to arise. You were only waiting for this moment to arise. You were only waiting for this moment to arise. When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And in my hour of darkness, she is standing right in front of me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be. Let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. And when the broken-hearted people living in the world agree, there will be an answer, let it be. For though they may be parted, there is still a chance that they will see. There will be an answer, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Yeah, there will be an answer, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. Night is cloudy, there is still a light that shines on me. Shine until tomorrow, let it be. I wake up to the sound of music. Mother Mary comes to me, speaking
heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord. But you don't really care for music, do you? It goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, the major lift, the baffled king composing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Your faith was strong, but you needed proof. You saw her bathing on the roof, her beauty and the moonlight overthrew you. She tied you to a kitchen chair, she broke your throne, she cut your hair, and from your lips she drew the hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Maybe I have been here before. I know this room, I've walked this floor. I used to live alone before I knew you. I've seen your flag on the marble arch. Love is not a victory march. It's a code and it's a broken hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. There was a time you let me know what's real and going on below, but now you never show it to me, do you? And remember when I moved in you, the holy dark was moving too, and every breath we drew was hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Maybe there's a God above, and all I ever learned from love was how to shoot at someone who outdrew you. And it's not a cry you can hear at night. It's not somebody who's seen the light. It's a cold and it's a broken hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
When you wish upon a star, makes no difference who you are. Anything your heart desires will come to you. If your heart is in your dream, no request is too extreme. When you wish upon like dreamers do. Fate is kind, she brings to those who love the sweet fulfillment of their secret longing, like a bolt out of the blue. Fate steps in and pulls you through, and you wish upon a star. Your dream comes true.
This is a movie of our cherry tree and the little maples. It's Thursday afternoon here, getting close to 5 o'clock. Looks like I'm about out of battery, so this isn't going to last too long. Over there we have Gingy and Gray Boy, and there's Shadow. There's a little shadow cat. And there's Gray Boy down in there. He's enjoying the shade. And so is big old fat Gingy. There she is. A shady afternoon. Mama's cherry tree and her sundial. Shadow again. The maples. That's it.
In those pictures, you saw several of Mike carving something. For some reason, he loved this poem, When Father Carves the Duck. We all look with anxious eyes when Father carves the duck, and Mother almost always sighs when Father carves the duck. Then all of us prepare to rise and hold our bibs before our eyes and be prepared for some surprise when Father carves the duck. He braces up and grabs a fork whenever he carves the duck, and he won't allow a soul to talk until he's carved the duck. The fork is jabbed into the sides, across the breast the knife he slides, while every careful person hides from flying chips of duck. The platter's always sure to slip when Father carves the duck, and how it makes the dishes slip. Potatoes fly amuck. The squash and cabbage leap in space. We get some gravy on our face, and Father mutters Hindu grace whenever he carves the duck. We then have learned to walk around the dining room and pluck from off the windowsills and walls our share of Father's duck. While Father growls and blows and jaws and swears the knife was full of flaws, and Mother laughs at him because he couldn't carve a duck. So at this time, I'm going to ask whoever feels led to speak to come up and say a few words about Mike.
First, I want to start off with why I call him Mikey, when in all the important ways he was my dad. For me, the word dad is just that, it's a word. My biological dad wasn't super present when Mikey came into our lives. I was 7 or 8. And he was in every way, shape, and form my dad, in the way most people think dad. He was supportive, firm, loyal, kind, funny, and too generous. When I say Mikey, it is more than dad. It is with so much warmth, love, and affection to me. Mikey was not just his name, but his title and role in my life. To call us close would be an understatement. Not only were we parent and child, but we were partners who worked well together. We took care of my mom together for more than 10 years. I don't remember one time where we argued or fought. Well, that's about the care of my mom. If you know me, you have to know this is an incredible feat, as I've heard before, that I am strong and outspoken, and I may be hard to get along with sometimes. No. But we did. There was so much love and mutual respect between us. I had to be careful about talking about any of my material wants, even in a casual conversation, because they would just show up. A day or two later, there'd be a package on my doorstep. Most recently, this was with a bicycle seat. He loved tinkering and fixing things. He'd find bikes or Power Wheel cars and repair them. My bike he was pretty proud of. He fixed it up, added a light, a phone case, bought a water bottle for it that matched. He delivered it to me in the park a few weeks ago. Having been a long time since I've ridden a bike, it hurt my area a bit. So I mentioned that I would definitely need a new seat. While hard at work the next day, I was looking on Amazon for new bicycle seats, and I get a call from Jake, my husband, letting me know that a seat was already delivered. Mikey was always thoughtful and generous. Family dinners were a huge part of our lives. Growing up, we sat at the table with no TV or electronics, and we talked about our days over dinner. We picked this back up again when I cared for my mama. It started simple. Mikey would come home from work and make spaghetti. For him, this was strictly noodles and like meatless marinara sauce. And a salad with homemade oil and vinegar dressing. The salad was just lettuce and tomatoes. Night after night of this, I just couldn't do it anymore and began to cook. My mother loved cooking, so we would work on recipes together, and Mikey and I would enjoy dinner together. We enjoyed each other's company, and we knew we could count on each other. He was huge on appreciation and praise. I was told daily that I was loved. He thanked me every day for caring for my mom. He thanked me for every dinner we had together, and told me all the time he put me on a pedestal and he owed me the world. I don't feel like that. I feel like what he owes me is a few more years, a few more dinners, more laughs, and more memories. We waited to have a child. I didn't know how well I could care for my mom and take care of a baby at the same time, like the logistics of it, how it would work. But Jake and I decided it was time. I remember telling Mikey I was pregnant. He smiled at me and he said, "I'm proud of you." And I was like, that's weird. Kind of weird. When asked about what my favorite memories are of him, there are a couple that stand out. When I finished my last final of my last college class, I called him, and he told me he was proud of me, and I cried. When I was sick but not living at home, Mom was already sick at this point, but I didn't have to care for her yet. He brought me over like Korean barbecue beef that he made. Just a plate of beef, no sides, nothing else, just delicious beef. After my mom died, with the help from both sides of the family, we bought a house. I only entertained options that were close to him so we could continue family dinners. Over time, they slipped to 3 or 4 days a week as we have soccer for Riker and work. I feel blessed to have had him in my life. He seemed to have all the answers, and I still not only want him here, but I need him here. My last words to him were, "I love you." I have no regrets with him, but I wish there was a word stronger than love, because love just doesn't seem accurate enough. He wasn't just my dad. He was and will forever be my Mikey.
Bear with me. Hopefully I'll be able to read this off the phone while I'm crying. Good afternoon. My name is Wendy, and I am Michael's oldest daughter. Had a little trouble remembering all the actual dates, but I know that I met him in either 1976 or 77, and I was 5 or 6 years old. If you saw the picture in there with the orange in his mouth, that was the night I met him. The night that both my mom and I met him. He and a friend, Tim, at the last minute had decided that they had nothing better to do and would go to the work picnic. Military is big on throwing all these picnics, and they decided, fine, we'll go. That picnic changed so many lives. Both my dad and Tim met their future wives at that picnic, and I met my dad. See, I'd had a father, and I'd even had a stepfather in my life, but I'd never... I'd never had a dad. And like Heather uses Mikey, that's her term for me, dad is the big one. Everything moved rather quickly in our world. He'd moved in, and then they got married on May 18th of either 77 or 78. Again, I can't remember exactly. Might have been 79, sorry. It's somewhere in that vicinity. With my mom wearing the most beautiful yellow dress. I later wore that dress for my 8th grade graduation, and that picture was up there too. When I was 9 or 10 years old, he made it official, and he adopted me. He showed me what real love was and made me his daughter forever. It didn't work out between him and my mom, but Dad never stopped loving me and spending time with me. I remember going and spending 2 weeks at a time at Grandma's house because he was living with his mom at the time after him and my mom had split. And he'd still, have summer visits, I'd have weekends. Anytime he came up to town, he would take me to Folsom. I remember the first day he introduced me to your mom at the cafe. They were already dating. Where am I at? Later, he met Kathy, and it was obvious that he was madly in love with her and that she loved him just as much. Kathy had 2 daughters, and I saw my dad give them the same unconditional love that he gave me. I might have been a bit jealous back then, but after growing up a bit, I could see that he never loved me any less. He just had more love to offer. I still spend a moment celebrating May 18th every year. Not because I wish my parents had been able to work it out, but because it was a day that decided that I would understand what a dad was. That day helped me pick my own husband, who is so much like my dad. It's freaky. Right down to absolutely loving MASH. And I hope he is loving up on Kathy, hugging his mom tighter than ever, and swapping stories with his friend Tim. His friend Tim has also passed away. And so, at the swapping stories about the office party that changed their lives. Thank you.
My name's Dan, I'm one of Mike's coworkers. I worked right next to him for several years. First, I wanted to say if there was an award for just how he took care of his late wife, Heather also took care of. If there was an award for husband of the decade, daughter of the decade, they both deserve it, and I sincerely mean that. He would come into work every day And I know a little bit like this, I had to take care of my late wife at a shorter duration though, but he would come in a positive mood. It wouldn't take him down. He'd be with boxes of donuts that were bigger than your head, and he'd say, "Take two, they're small." And he's just always in a great mood, and just a wonderful person. I was walking the dog the other day just thinking about all the nice memories of Mike. My dog's a corgi with feet about the size of your fingers. And I realized I've walked too far. I almost needed to take an Uber just to get my dog back. And it was just always a nice and kind person at work. And I do miss the clam chowder that he brought in. It was just amazing. I've been to the Fisherman's Wharf, all these different places. That was off the chart, just amazing. As far as his support, I did the same thing Mike did. We would dispatch calls to fix computer systems at hospitals. My dispatch would say, replace hard drive, replace motherboard, done. Mike would always go the extra mile. See document number this, he'd cut and paste, and I mean, he would just go overboard to the point that some management didn't even like it. It was like, Mike, you cut it down. He would walk the person through, and I think that's just part of his personality, the way he took care of his wife. He knew no other way but just to go to the extreme. I would have people out in the field, salespeople, and they would ask me questions, detailed stuff that beyond what I should support. Can you research this and research this? I really can't do that. You know what they'd tell me? Can you pass me to Mr. Scott? Because he will. Many times they would do that. And that's all I have. I just hope he rests in peace. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dave Dunham. I knew Mike in two different careers. First was with TDS. We hired him right out of Sac State. We definitely counted on him. We had a crazy ragtag team. It's sad that the two groups he worked for, Volcano Phillips and TDS, didn't get to know each other. He was amazing. We counted on him as TDS. We did some crazy projects that a company our size shouldn't have taken on. We did the flight computer testing for the V-22 for GE Avionics. He worked on that so hard. And in the darkest times, he had a dry sense of humor, but it was always great. You know, so we'd take on projects, and they were fixed price. And so we had to get these jobs done in a certain period of time, or we'd get fined or whatever. So we would do a preview of what this job we landed and how we were going to do this. And then Mike would raise his hand in the back and he'd go, "Dave, that'll never work." and so then there were other times where we'd be working late at night towards the end of a deadline to realize what we were working on wasn't going to work. and so he says, "Well, Dave, you know, that isn't going to work, you know, but there is some good news." And I go, "What is it, Mike?" And he goes, "I was wrong. There is no good news." So, you know, and then, so he was our quality control. He was our documentation specialist. And like I say, there was, so we did a lot of work. GE would give us job after job after job. And so some of them weren't very fun. And so they had a group of products that they needed support for third world countries. And one of them was for the J-85 jet engine. And so we had to simulate part of the plane in order to test the controller for the jet engine. So I came up with what I thought was a great idea, you know, use a light feedback system. It didn't work. So Mike came up with a way to do it, and he went to GE back there. And so we kept landing those jobs, and they called it mature products. And he goes, "Dave, those are manure products. Those aren't the good products." So we would try to save money every way along the line. And one way we would do it is we would rent a car for a period of time because we had to keep people back in Binghamton, New York for long periods of time. So there was always a little bit of a clash between the different teams to pick up the jobs back there in New York. So with that one car, I don't see Felix here today, but Felix and whoever he was teamed with, they would always eat at the same restaurant. And if you ate dinner there, they would give you like a little slice of pie and a piece of plastic. So Mike had a follow-up week, and this was like during the summer in New York. So they left a piece of pie underneath the back seat somewhere. So Mike took that car, and he calls up and he goes, "There's no way I can drive this car. Something died in this car." You know, we had to convince him, "Mike, you can't turn in that car." He eventually found the pie. But anyway, he was great to work with, very, very dependable. And like Dan was saying, if he knew a field service engineer was out there and he needed something, he would go to the ends of the earth to make sure he got what he needed, you know, make that repair at a hospital. So definitely enjoyed it. What a great individual. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dan Reed, and Mike was a dear friend and a big help in helping me start a business. And he didn't do it intentionally, I don't think, but I had gone to several techies that I knew and explained what I wanted done, and they were all convinced it wasn't possible or worth doing or too expensive. And I just happened to mention something about it to Mike one day, and Mike said, "Oh, it is a bad idea, but I can help you." You know? I said, "Well, you know, I see two major technical problems that need to be overcome." And he said, "Oh no, there's more than that." I said, there's at least 3 or 4. And but I said, "This is a key one. If we can't do this one, then it's not possible." He says, "Oh, I'll look at it, you know." Well, he looked at it for about 3 or 4 weeks of every weekend, every night, and he called me and said, "Yeah, I think I got this figured out." I said, "How did you do it? How did you do it?" He said, "I grabbed that problem, and I grabbed it by the hair, and I wrestled it to the ground. And I hit it, and it finally gave up. And I picked it up, dusted it off, washed it off, and here it is. It works." I said, "It works? You know how to solve the problem, or it's solved?" He said, "No, it's solved. Come and look, you know." So he then said, of course, there's like 4 other problems. They're all serious. Maybe we can solve them, maybe we can't. But I'll look at it. Well, he looked at it all right. He looked at it for the next 3 or 4 months until one after one they said it. And each time he solved it, he said, "This is a bad idea, not a good product, it'll never work. If it works, you won't be able to sell it. And if you can sell it, we'll never get enough money to, you know, pay for all the effort we put in." And he's not getting a dime for this, not anything for this. And I'm trying to line up customers and brochures and marketing and all that stuff anyway, other people. But that was Mike. He never let go of the problem. He loved the problem. The problem is what he really enjoyed solving, a puzzle solver. All that, his technical skill and so on, dedication, sort of pales in comparison to his character and his ethics and the person he was. That's it.
I know it's a long service, so I didn't want to take up a lot of time. I just wanted to say something real quick. And so Michael J. Scott, or Mikey to us, he was a solid, stand-up, honest guy. He didn't sugarcoat things at all. He would tell you truthfully how he saw a situation without holding back. He was dependable. If you needed help, whether you asked for it or not, you got it. He would be there. He was my father-in-law and a stepdad to Heather, Elizabeth, and Wendy. But he didn't operate according to titles. He was the epitome of what a father should be. For many years, being married to Heather, his daughter, I didn't really get to know him deeply. He and Heather were busy diligently giving care to Kathy. But when my dad died, less than a year later, Kathy had passed. We were able to get close. We were able to go out to dinners at restaurants, like not tied to the house. Watch television shows, spend quality time together, and just chat. I miss that now. My dad was my go-to. Whenever I had a problem, he would help me. And when he was gone, whenever I was stumped or needed something and he wasn't there anymore, Mikey quickly stepped up and became what I needed, like he did for so many others. He changed my definition of father-in-law. He gave me an amazing example on how to truly care for others. Having known Mikey made me a better person, and I will forever miss him.
Hello. Excuse me. My name is Cheryl Amordino. And I first met Kathy. We always called her Catherine, but Michael always called her Catherine. And I first met her when she came to Peter Burnett School. And she came as a PE teacher, but finally an opening came up in 3rd grade, which is where I taught. And so she joined our little tribe in 3rd grade. We were a very close-knit group of teachers. And she and I would go in about 7 o'clock in the morning, and school started at 9. And we would go in, and she'd bring her tea over to my room. I'd be correcting papers, and we'd be, talking about, the kids and our families and what was going on. So we got to be close. That's when schools were getting into computers. When I knew about computers, you could put in a thimble. And Kathy knew I was really struggling. I mean, taking my kids to the computer lab at school, I was like, duh, what do I do here? So she said, well, my husband, he knows computers a bit. So I'd met her husband because he had this nice ponytail. And he would come with Kathy to set up her classroom. And he'd be up there on a ladder putting up the bulletin board stuff. My husband never helped me do the bulletin board stuff, but he had his own bulletin boards he had to do. I can't complain. So I knew who Mike was, Michael. And she said, well, he can help you there. So push comes to shove. All of a sudden, Kathy says, well, I have a computer for you. I said, you do? She said, yeah. Well, Michael gets these computers that are all broken down, and he fixes them. And, well, at that time, we had 20 kids in a classroom, so the class sizes had gotten really small. So Michael ended up giving me 11 computers. I could have half a class on computers and then work with the other half, and then switch them. There were days when, well, we taught in a tough neighborhood. There were days when some of the kids just couldn't handle life, and the principal would say, go down to Mrs. Amordino's room, and I'd put them on a computer and give them some alone time. It didn't matter if it was lunchtime, their recess, whatever, something to get their heads straightened out. And he was always there. Kathy was across the way from me. Kathy, how do I fix this? I can't turn it on. I can't turn it off. It was always some kind of problem with the computer. I do not have a computer mind to this day. But anyway, we had a lot of fun times together. Now, we had some great cherry trees on our property. And Michael and Kathy would come out. And he loved the cherries. He'd pick cherries, and then Cheeto would give him, my Italian husband, would give him some of his homemade Italian wine. And so we had some really good times. But then Kathy became ill, and it was heartbreaking. Most people would have put their loved ones in a home. I never saw anything like what Michael and Heather did for Kathy. And it started off, it wasn't too bad, but it got bad really fast. And when she needed 24-hour-a-day care. If you ever went out to see her, the devotion, you can't even, there are no words to describe the devotion that Michael had for Kathy and Heather. And it was a 24-hour-a-day job. And as people said, he slept on the floor, and he took care of her, and then he got up and went to work. And, well, my husband and I have often talked about the devotion that Michael and Heather had for Kathy, and she struggled. It was a very tough situation, for sure. But they did it, and she was always loved and always well taken care of, and always knew they were going to be there for her. She was never going into a home. Thank you.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jake's mom, Heather's mother-in-law, Kim. Just wanted to say a couple of words. Mikey really did know the joy that came from giving. He seemed to really embrace the saying, it's better to give than to receive. Whether he was sharing a meal, knowledge, or buying gifts, he just had a knack for knowing what was needed, and he did not hesitate to provide. My family and I are honored to have known Mikey and the way he put others first and never seemed to expect anything in return. I will always remember his honesty, kindness, and selfless generosity. I just think the world would be a better place if we could all be a little more like Mikey. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak? So during my introduction, I said we gathered in a ritual to celebrate Mike's life and to mourn his passing. And the ritual's coming to a close, but the mourning and the celebration will go on. You celebrate Mike every time you remember one of his many kind acts, funny sayings or wise advice. You celebrate Mike when you imitate his empathy and compassion, his self-sacrificial generosity, his loving care and support. You celebrate Mike when you pass on his unconditional love to others. And don't be surprised if you feel Mike's presence touch you in a very special way. Heather writes this beautiful story. Mikey loved praying mantises. He had generations of them, Daisy, Ruby, and Violet. He would be happy every time he saw a mantis outside, saying it was one of his girls' lineages. One of the projects he mentioned to me that he wanted my husband Jake to do was to rehang the coaxial cable that had been hanging down since we recently had the house painted. After Mikey's passing, I told my husband of the project. Jake started on the roof, and in the first spot he started, tucked under the eave, was a praying mantis waiting to say hello. So you know when you see a cat, a bird, or a mantis, that Mike is letting you know he's around and he wants you to smile. At this time, we're concluding our service, and I want to let you know that there's a reception where I heard there's going to be that clam chowder people talked about at Heather's house. It's at 2661 Yuma Circle in Sacramento. Does everybody know where Travis Air Force Base is? It's nowhere near there. Thank you.
It's time to call it a day. They've burst your pretty balloon and taken the moon